Ellie, over to you.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I hope you are well. Glorious sunshine out there. So thank you for joining me today. So obviously this is a blood pressure and nutrition webinar, and we are going to explore some of the ways that food can have an impact on blood pressure. If blood pressure isn't necessarily an issue for you, please listen in anyway and take away some of this information. It's because it will impact other areas of the body, other systems of the body. So a little bit about me. I'm a nutritional therapist. I've been working with the Healthy Employee for about 5 years now. I also have my own clinic, and what I tend to do is try and get to the root cause of the issue, as opposed to just kind of dealing with the symptoms. So sort of a functional medicine background. So it's a little bit about me. So we're going to explore, as I said, the relationship between food and blood pressure. Obviously, bear in mind it's a multi-pronged attack. So if you have got issues with blood pressure, obviously we've got to be looking at the whole picture. So exercise, the foods that we're eating, managing our stress, if we're smoking, so there's a lot more that goes into it. But yeah, for now, let's talk about food. So there's a great saying, and I don't know whether any of you have heard it. It's by Hippocrates, many years ago. Let food be thy medicine. So this isn't a new concept. This has been around for a long time, and the foods that we're eating can really have an impact on us both, as I'm sure you're aware, both negatively and positively. Okay, so one of the things that I like to do with my clients, and kind of a mindset that I'd like you to get into, even if this is just one thing that you take away today, is this food, so whatever we're eating, is this food harming or is it healing? Okay, is it slowly creating illness and disease, because these things don't happen overnight, or is it encouraging us to thrive and have a fulfilling life, which is, I think, what we all want. Okay, so how does blood pressure affect how does nutrition affect blood pressure? Okay, so there are certain foods that we can eat which will help to support. So things like potassium-rich foods, polyunsaturated fat, good quality proteins. These will all have a positive effect, and we will explore those as we go into more detail. So some of the foods that can affect our blood pressure, and it's probably no surprise, but foods like salt, sugar-laden foods high in saturated fats, and the trans fats. When I say trans fats, those are it's fat that's gone through a process. If you think of cakes, biscuits, those kinds of foods, they've gone through this process, and it's trans fats that are particularly detrimental for our health. Okay, so they can have a negative effect on our blood pressure and affect our heart health. Okay, so some of the foods, as you can see here, things like fish and chips. Okay, so yes, they taste great, but they can also have an effect and raise both the systolic and diastolic blood pressure level. So I know that you spoke yesterday, so just to recap, the systolic number is the number at the top, and that's when the blood is being pumped to the heart, and the diastolic is when there's stillness. Okay, so we want both of those numbers, ideally 120/80, there or thereabouts, and we want them balanced. Okay, so by limiting these foods, we are and replacing them with healthier options, and obviously a healthier way of preparing foods, a healthier way of cooking, we're limiting our risk of high blood pressure. Okay, so when we think about high blood pressure, one of the foods that we really think about is salt. Okay, it raises our blood pressure, so we don't really need to be adding salt to foods. There's so much salt already in the foods that we eat. Okay, so aiming to eat at least 6 grams of salt, which is about a teaspoon a day. That's plenty, that's more than enough. If I'm going along too quickly, by the way, I should have said this at the beginning, or I've missed anything or you're unclear, do pop a message in the chat. Okay. So again, so thinking about the nutrients that will affect our blood pressure. So sodium, potassium, calcium and magnesium. These are all minerals that play a huge role. They can either be detrimental or they can help to regulate our blood pressure. And in particular, the resistance of the arteries. So it's when the blood pressure is being pushed through the system. Okay, so one of the most popular approaches when it comes to managing blood pressure is the DASH diet. So I'm not sure, I don't know whether any of you have heard of this. It stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. Okay, so rather than being a diet, it's really kind of a healthy lifestyle, a healthy way of eating. So it's reducing salt and it's increasing the minerals that we just mentioned, potassium, calcium and magnesium, and eating foods rich in those minerals. Okay, also it avoids sodium, and it's a low trans fat, saturated fat diet and artificial sugars. So just cutting out all of those kind of things. Okay, and loading up with fresh fruits and vegetables, eating good quality proteins. So really thinking about eating a diet as close to nature as possible, as nature intended, staying away from the processed stuff. Plenty of fresh fish, legumes, whole grains. Okay, so let's just explore in a little bit more detail some of the foods that can help to support. So green leafy vegetables, we've been told since we were children to be eating our greens, okay? So as well as having other benefits such as supporting the detoxification pathways, these foods are rich in potassium. So things like your spinach, cabbage, sprouts, all of those foods, getting them into the diet. Another thing that I'd like you to take away today is think about eating the rainbow. And again, if you've got family, children, it's nice just to get into those habits. So when I say eat the rainbow, so all of those vibrant colours bring something different to the body, something that we need. And as I mentioned before, it can be anything from like detoxification, maintaining a healthy blood pressure, providing us with a variety of different phytonutrients, phytochemicals that we need to be thriving in our health. Okay. Yep. So potassium, going back to the potassium in the green leafy vegetable, on the periodic table, potassium is opposite to sodium. Okay, so when we've got sodium in the body, it holds onto fluid, okay, and that fluid makes it kind of quite viscous and has an effect, obviously, on our blood pressure. When we eat foods rich in potassium, okay, it helps us to pass through the fluids when we go to the loo, okay, so again, having an effect on our blood pressure. So potassium also, it helps to relax the walls of the arteries as well. So fatty fish like, so you know the bone in fish, so things like canned salmon and sardines, okay, they're rich in calcium, and again it's supporting the integrity of the blood vessels, so really good idea to get those in. And also other fish like mackerel and obviously salmon that we mentioned, rich in omega-3. And again, that's been there's studies to show that supports heart health. Okay, so again, studies to show that you can supplement on omega-3 fatty acids. That is one of the nutrients that I do encourage people to supplement with without a consultation, as long as it's if you check it with the GP, if you're on any of the medication, of course. But fat is something that we can't make fat, okay, we don't make fat ourselves. We need to consume it from foods that we eat, and a lot of us aren't getting enough in our diet. So going back to school, going off piece slightly, but just to give you a little bit of, you know, one of the reasons, one of the many reasons why, if you remember the vitamins A, D, E and K, so they're fat soluble, and then you've got vitamins B and C, and they're water soluble. So we need that fat to absorb, to transport those nutrients around the body. Okay, another reason why we want to get this good fat in the diet, as well as it being good for heart health, every single cell in our body is covered with a fatty membrane. Okay, so it houses our DNA, it houses our energy production. So literally, cellularly, for every single cell in the body, we need to have this good fat. I'm obviously not talking about the fish and chips that we just mentioned. I'm talking about olive oil, fat, good, the oily fish that we mentioned, avocados. Again, avocados, another great food for potassium. Okay, so you can really start to see how these foods that we're eating can be our best friend or our enemy. It really is, food is medicine. Okay, and these are all really lovely foods to include and enjoy. Okay. Okay. So berries, another great one to get into the diet. I like I recommend at least 1 cup of berries per day. So raspberries, blackberries, blueberries. So all of those berries that have got that vibrant colour, they have an antioxidant called anthocyanin, and it's what gives it that rich pigmentation. So it helps with the artery walls, and it kind of widens them and allows them to become more flexible. Okay, so I've always got, even in the winter months, I've always got some frozen in the freezer. So you could just get a little portion out, have it with breakfast. One of the simplest ways, just to add a little bit more into your yogurts, smoothies, oats, if you eat oats, any of those kind of foods, just making sure that you're getting those berries in and a nice dose of that antioxidant. Yogurt, another staple in our house. So yogurt, it's rich in calcium, and obviously we need that for the integrity of the blood vessels, and it will support with high blood pressure. Okay, what calcium does, it helps to tighten and relax those walls. Okay, one of the other things that yogurt's good for, it's good for gut health. Okay, again, going off piece slightly, but I think it's useful to know why. So to support the integrity of the gut, we need good bacteria. I don't know whether it's something that you're familiar with, but I'd be happy to answer any questions on that as well. But yes, getting yogurt into the diet. I'm not talking about your sugar-free or fruity flavored, any of these things. If you start getting in the habit of looking at packets and labels as well, if you don't understand it, you don't know what it is, I kind of try and avoid those things. The other thing with the low sugar ones, the sugar-free, they contain things like aspartame and other nasties that have been linked to cancer. So just try and avoid those. And when we're eating those sugar-free foods, the body doesn't know that it's not sugar, so insulin is still being produced. Okay, so it's actually, we're not benefiting in any way, shape or form. Okay, keeping foods, as I said before, whole and as close to nature. And if it's the sweetness that you like, there you go, you can chuck your berries in there and you've got a nice substantial snack or breakfast. So oatmeal, another one of my cupboard staples. It's a really cheap whole food, great for the children, great in winter, but also lovely in the summer if you want to have overnight oats. Okay, rather than going with piles and piles of oats, I kind of think it's a good idea to pump them up a little bit with flax seeds, chia seeds, any of the lovely seeds, just to give them a little bit more volume, and obviously your fruit in there. They're a really nutrient dense food, full of fibre, and again, that's going to support a healthy weight. That's another thing that we need to look at, when we're thinking if we've got high blood pressure, thinking of, considering our weight and not carrying too much excess. A little tip for you: when I'm preparing oats, I soak them for a minimum of 20 minutes in water or almond milk, whatever it is that you want to soak them in. What this does, so the oats, they're coated in something called phytates. Okay, by soaking them, it just breaks down those phytates and makes the nutrients in there a little bit more readily available. And obviously with the rising bills, it makes them a lot quicker to cook. So yeah, make sure you've got some oats in your cupboard, a nice quick go-to, and obviously a much more substantial breakfast than reaching for sugar-laden cereals, which most of them are. And again, considering getting in the habits of reading labels, And when you see how much, you know, bran flakes, people think bran flakes are healthy, but if you have a look at how much sugar's in there, how much salt is in there, so we need to just get rid of those foods and concentrate, like I say, whole, as close to nature, which obviously oatmeal is. Okay, so seeds, getting into the habit of eating seeds and making that part of our staple is a really good idea, just to bulk foods out, but they're really nutrient dense, again rich in omega-3, the fatty acids that are beneficial that we talked about, and it's a much better option. So if you're on the road a lot, or you're wanting to reach for a packet of crisps, or you're stopping off at the gas station, obviously they're not great choices. So I've always got like a packet of pumpkin seeds or a packet of cashew nuts, raw cashew nuts, just getting into the habit of snacking on these. Okay, rich in magnesium as well. One of so magnesium has many cofactors within the body. Okay, and a lot of us are deficient in it. So this is just a nice way of making sure that we're getting a little bit of a dose of that. So what it does, it's relaxing. So whenever you think of any aches, pains, cramps, tension, possibly a magnesium deficiency, so trying to get it through food is a really good idea. So beetroots, they're a seasonal food, but again, it's my first go-to when I'm talking about blood pressure, actually, because it's vasodilating. So all those blood vessels, it's helping them to widen. So obviously then the heart is not having to work quite as hard to pump the blood. And there were studies to show that by drinking a cup of beetroot juice, 20 minutes later, it had reduced the systolic number, so the number at the top. So, you know, again, we really are starting to see how food can, you know, be our medicine. So yeah, grated into salads. I don't know how you like to. I do like to juice mine with a nice big orange. It's really palatable, a good habit to get into. Again, garlic is another one that I eat in the bucket load, and the reason is this really is a superfood. So we hear about superfoods, and I always believe that foods that are super, they're not advertised because they don't need to be. So again, be mindful of clever marketing. But going back to garlic, so it's antifungal, it's antimicrobial. So if you feel like you've got a cold coming on, it's a really good medicinal food. Okay, aside from that, and it tastes great, okay, adding to dishes, it tastes great. But what it does, it can boost the nitric oxide levels, which dilate the blood vessels as well. Okay, so the more relaxed the vessels are, as we mentioned, the easier it is on the heart. So just getting into that kind of mindset. Another little tip when preparing garlic, and something that I often do, well, I always do, so I top and tail the garlic and peel it, and then I leave it on the side, and I prepare the rest of my vegetables, whatever it is I'm cooking, and I'll leave it for at least 10 minutes. Okay, the reason I do that, there's a compound in there called allicin, and it just allows that to rise. The other thing that I do, I don't put garlic in straight away. So, you know, if you're sauteing your onion, by blanching it, if we're cooking it for too long, it's going to destroy those beneficial compounds. So another little takeaway there for you. So we touched briefly on the benefits of nuts when we were talking about seeds. So so things like almonds, walnuts contain the omega-3. Omega-3 is incredibly anti-inflammatory. So again, great idea to get that into the diet. We want to dampen down any inflammation. So just to give you an idea, so things like, you know, sugar, alcohol, caffeine, those sorts of things drum up inflammation. Foods that are rich in omega-3 will dampen it down, and that's really what we want to be doing. And if I'm confusing you or going off piste here, I'll be happy to answer any questions at the end. Okay, so pistachios, yeah, getting those into the diet, full of good fats, and has been shown to have a positive effect on both the systolic and the diastolic readings. So get a handful of those, and it's just nice as another little variety. So if you're tempted to reach for a packet of crisps, get the pistachios out, and you're less likely to eat them in huge amounts because they're so fiddly to open, so it kills a bit of time. Okay, olive oil. So when we think of olive oil, I think it's well known that it's great for a healthy heart. It's popular, you know, when we think of the Mediterranean diet. It contains an antioxidant called polyphenols. And again, great for the integrity of vascular health, the vessels, and helping them to maintain their elasticity. And also it goes back to the good fats that we need in the diet. Okay, and avoiding things like, so if you're using canola oil or vegetable oils, any of those sort of seed oils, again, going back to the inflammation, they are going to elevate inflammation, whereas this olive oil will dampen it down. Okay, so it's quite important. It is important to consider that. Okay, inflammation within the body. Okay, so rotating foods is really, really good for our health. It just encourages a diversity of nutrients. So if you are a regular meat eater and that's your thing, then including these types of foods into the diet, even if you have a couple of meat-free days, is a really, really good idea. Okay, they're cost effective and they're really nutrient dense, great source of protein, and they contain fibre, and as we mentioned before, helps to support a healthy digestive system, thus helping to support a healthy weight. Okay, it's been thought again that they ward off coronary heart disease. So just a variety of different pulses and legumes. Chickpea salad, great favourite, sticking in your kidney beans with if you're making a chili. Really, really versatile and highly recommend for those reasons. Okay, so let's look at pomegranate juice. So it's another really effective way of reducing both of the numbers, okay, the systolic and the diastolic. I do have a little bit of an issue with juice, and I'll tell you for why. Because pomegranate juice, I would avoid or limit, okay, or maybe water it down. I tend to go for the seeds, snacking on them, adding them to salads or yogurt. The reason why I tend to avoid juice is because it's very highly concentrated in sugar, okay, and sugar is going to spike our blood glucose. Again, I'm going to go off piece slightly, but it's useful information to take with you, and something to consider if you have those afternoon slumps throughout the day. Okay, so we would like our blood pressure to remain balanced throughout the day. Okay, so when we wake up in the morning, I don't know whether I've spoken to some of you already in the past, but this is something that I try to put across, because again, it's something that's quite important to understand why. So when we wake up in the morning, our blood glucose is low, obviously because we've been fasting overnight. And just to give an example, bear with me. So we have our coffee with our 2 sugars and we have a sugar spike, okay, and then it comes crashing down. Okay, so it's below this baseline where we want to be. And then we're going to have, our piece of toast with jam, we're going to have a sugar spike and it's going to come crashing down. So if you can see, we've got this yo-yo going on throughout the day. Every time it goes below this base layer, cortisol is produced. Okay, cortisol is the stress hormone. Cortisol will contribute to the adipose tissue, so the fatty tissue around the middle. And again, so that does tie in with blood pressure because we want to maintain a healthy weight. But also when we have cortisol produced in the morning, we have more in the morning, and it's how we get things done. But when you've got this going on and it's chronic, then we're going to just be exhausted. So that could be a reason why you're having that kind of, 4 p.m. afternoon slump. So how do we balance it? So we have foods whole as opposed to juicing would be one way, because then you've got the fibre as well. And having them with good quality fats. So if we're having sugar, good quality fats, good quality proteins. Okay, I'm talking about natural sugars obviously here, and not the silver spoon, whatever it is. Okay, I hope that helps, and I hope I haven't lost you. Okay, dark chocolate. Yes, I'm telling you to eat chocolate. Isn't that amazing? Swapping our milk chocolate though for a couple of pieces of dark chocolate, about 70%. Okay, again, they have an antioxidant in them called flavanol. Okay, and what that does, so like the garlic, it increases the nitric oxide levels. So again, can have an effect on widening the blood, the blood vessels. Again, so the heart's not working too much. So I'm not talking about inhaling, you know, bar after bar, but if you are partial to a little bit of chocolate in the evening, opt for 70% dark chocolate. Excuse me. Okay, so as I mentioned in the beginning, food alone, it's not a multi, yes, it will help, but we need like a multi-pronged attack when it comes to blood pressure. So what I see and what I have witnessed, which I kind of struggle with, is when people are going to the GP with high blood pressure and put on medication immediately, but they still haven't made any changes to their lifestyles or our lifestyles. Again, this isn't coming from a place of judgment, by the way, but it's really important to put these changes in place. And then if there's still an issue with blood pressure, then absolutely medication has its place, and we're very, very fortunate to have that. But what I'm talking about, if we are, you know, smoking, that has to go. You know, it's going to have a huge impact on our blood pressure. Caffeine will spike your blood pressure. So just go easy on that. If you're one of these people that's relying on caffeine to get you through the day, you know, maybe think about reducing it. Okay, alcohol. So, you know, we are a drinking culture. The sun's shining now, and we're seeing people sitting in beer gardens, and it's all good fun, but it's limiting that as well. So everything in moderation, alcohol in moderation. We just don't need to go. I think the Brits tend to go a little bit too far with it. Again, not coming from a place of judgment, just be mindful of the effect that alcohol has on the body. It is also a carcinogenic. Okay, and stress. So we are all living, you know, we are living in a stressful world nowadays. From the moment we open our eyes in the morning, whether we like it or not, we're exposed to these mini stressors. So whilst you don't feel like that we're stressed, is that because we've become so used to it, to feeling like this? So we open our eyes and we've got an alarm from our phone. I mean, we've always got these next to us. So we're woken up abruptly by our alarm, and then we have a little scroll on the news, and it's not really great news. So again, that's another little stressor that we might scroll on social media, maybe not necessarily agree with what John down the road says, another stressor. Then we're getting into the car and we've got traffic. So you can see how these little stressors, and we haven't even got to work yet. So it's really important to counterbalance that. Okay, so having time in nature, you know, walking in the sunshine with, you know, feeling the sun on our skins, leaving the phone at home, guided meditation. Again, we used to think of that as a little bit woo-woo, but there is scientific evidence to back the benefits of meditation. Listening to music, listening to podcasts, whatever it is, I urge you to do like at least 10 minutes a day, where that's just your time away from, you know, our busy lives. Okay, so managing stress. Okay, so exercise as well. Exercise is a big one to support healthy blood pressure. So living a sedentary life is setting us up for a whole host of issues. And you know, if you think about it, we commute to work, then we're sitting at our desk for 8 hours, commuting home, and then we're sitting in the evening. So really making sure that we're incorporating a little bit of movement, a little bit of exercise every day. Make sure that we're doing something. So again, helps to encourage maintaining a healthy body weight. And then as a last resort, if we need to take medication from the GP and address it with them, then absolutely, that's what we should do. So I've talked ever such a lot. Have we got any questions?